For a great cup of joe, there's one thing you should know. Your morning brew can also be playful. Buff Boy Brewing guys make the temperature rise, and you surely feel naughty when you swallow our coffee. If you want some real heat, give your mouth a fine treat. You will want some more, rest assured. Buff Boy Brewing, you can't get enough of.
It's time for The Scribble, your weekly fix of celebrity chats, bizarre stories in the news, and basic random chatter with best-selling author and syndicated radio host Jeremy Bradley. Make sure your seat is in the upright and locked position and your barf bag is securely in place. Here's Jeremy Bradley.
Thank you very much, Larson. Jeremy Bradley here. This is The Scribble. Thanks for tuning in on your favorite podcast app. This is where I start to gag. And remember, if you like what you hear, click subscribe so you never miss an episode. Thank you. Oh, all right. They make me say that because it's like YouTube videos, right? Before you get to what you're actually wanting to watch, remember, hit subscribe so you always get... Oh, I just want to... Anyway. All right, so we're going to have fun this week because it's another episode of Ask JB. And before anybody sort of loses their shit, I don't want to make it seem like I get, hundreds of emails of people asking me for my advice because, you're such an inspiration. That's not okay. Let's be very real up front. That's not what happens. But over the years, hosting the syndicated radio shows that I did, I've stayed in contact with some people, and we have discussions back and forth. It's not as frequent, obviously, but certainly I've stayed in touch, and so they like to get my opinion because I don't want to say a straight shooter or shoot from the hip kind of guy. I don't know what the term would be. I speak my mind. I don't know, again, if that's an age thing, I think in this business of broadcasting or media, probably more so with social media, you get these instant reactions and responses from people. And me being in the newspaper for 20 some years, as I have been, and on the radio like I was or still am to a point, but, you just have to develop that thick skin where you just don't care. I always laugh at people on the hosts of The View who talk about social media and how I don't read it. I don't even read the comments, whatever. But I would kind of criticize Sunny Hostin every now and then. All of a sudden I noticed that I was blocked by her. So it's kind of like, well, I think you are kind of noticing the comments, and you wouldn't have blocked me if you didn't look at them. So that's somebody who's, call bullshit on that I don't read the comments. Oh, I don't even read them. I don't. Yeah, you must. And so for me, I truly don't care. I mean, one of my friends had asked me, doesn't it bother you if somebody tells you that they don't like your book? I've written a few books in my time. And I say, not really. I make a joke and go, did you pay full retail? Great, thanks. And that, I just leave it at that. Or the person didn't pay full retail, and I'm like, well, then what do I care what they think? But I mean, you just can't. You're not going to make everybody happy. Not everybody's going to love what you write. Not everybody's going to like what you say. And you just have to sort of come to terms with that. So you eventually stop doing the song and dance. You kind of stop giving a shit. You just stop, holding your tongue because it's, and I don't know if that's, again, an age thing, if that's just your career and you have to kind of deal with that and get past that. I don't know what it is. Is it the Sophia Petrillo thing from Golden Girls where you just she had a stroke, wasn't it? And then she just lost all that filter. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but getting more to the point, so Ask JB is something where people will just randomly email me and ask, a relationship question or something about their career or whatever it is. And I don't give advice. This is the thing. When people ask me my thoughts on something or my opinion, I always just ask them a bunch of questions and make them look at something a different way. So if it's something like a relationship, are they wanting me to say, oh yeah, that guy's an asshole, leave him, he should be treating you better? I flip that around and go, well, do you such and such and such? Does he da-da-da-da-da? What if you da-da-da-da? And they start the wheels turning in their own head, and then they formulate their own opinion based on, I don't want to say that I'm interviewing them, but certainly I'm making them look at things a different way. And so that's what we're going to do on Ask JB. We haven't done this for a long time. I'm a little bit rusty. So normally what I'll do is I'll read out the email, and I'll just answer the thing. And that's what's going to be on the show this week for the next, what are we at, 20-something minutes? I was supposed to throw to a break about a minute in, but whatever. We'll get to Ask JB on the Scribble right after this.
Isn't it crazy that you wait for payday, but before you know it, you're strapped for cash again? It's time to stop blowing your money and become a smart spender with the book, The Official Guide to Being an American Cheapskate at cheapskatebook.com. Learn simple ways to cut costs at home every day and during special times of the year. Don't go broke at Christmas. Don't remortgage the house for a fancy vacation. The book is filled with tips to save you money throughout the year. Check out the best-selling book, The Official Guide to Being an American Cheapskate at cheapskatebook.com or on Amazon and iTunes.
It's never too early to start thinking about your next holiday. Have you checked out Mexico recently? From tequila tasting, swimming with horses, to ziplining through the jungle and watching whales and dolphins in their natural habitat, Puerto Vallarta has it all. Visit mexico.jbonair.com to see all the fun PV has to offer. That's at mexico.jbonair.com for hundreds of photos, interviews, and videos from around the tourist hotspot. Check out mexico.jbonair.com for all the fun. That's mexico.jbonair.com.
Alrighty, JB here, back on the Scribble. And we always have to do this disclaimer that I am not a psychologist, relationship expert, career counselor, anything like that. I'm just putting my thoughts out there. Again, you take that information as you will. Do with it what you will. If you decide to destroy your life because you took my advice or my opinion, remember, it's not my advice, I'm not telling you what to do, that's on you. I am not liable for anything that happens based on how I respond to your message. And I should also point out, I don't give the people's names on here. I do mention to them, hey, you know what, I'm going to talk about this in general terms on the show. You're okay with that? Good, because even if you're not, I'm going to do it anyway. So, one of the questions that came up, because I mentioned, retiring at 39, I've talked about that. Somebody says, well, do you regret that? Would you go back into work? And quite honestly, no, I have no regrets in life. She then elaborated a little bit more, going and saying, was there anything in your career back in the day that you would regret doing, that you could take back if you could? And truthfully, no. I think that maybe I would have become an entrepreneur a little bit earlier. But one of the things that I did when I was starting out doing my own thing, which was, writing a newspaper column, hosting a radio show, was I always had an actual, full-time job at the same time. So I started on the radio when I was living at home with my parents, and I had office jobs. I was a corporate writer. I was, doing communication stuff. I was writing press releases. I was, just doing different things. And then when I would get home, doing my newspaper and radio stuff. So it was work overload for me. I would think if I could, change something, I just wouldn't have done all of that at the same time. Now, having said that, it's because I did that I was able to bank so much money and then be able to retire at 39. So, it's sort of half and half, right? You want to stop and smell the roses, as they say. But if I didn't work my ass like a dog then, I could maybe have retired at 45 and 5 years later or 6 years later, but I don't know. So do I have any, regrets life-wise? No. I mean, how many people are going to regret and go and say, oh, I can't believe I retired at 39. Oh, that was a terrible decision. Maybe if they didn't have anything else going for themselves, if they didn't have an amazingly hot husband and just that desire to slow down and do nothing, then perhaps. I mean, I've heard a lot of people who say that retirement is a very depressing time where, one of the newspapers that I worked for a while ago, when people would retire, they were lifers. They were there for 20, 30 years. They retired and all of a sudden they just didn't know what to do with themselves, and there were a few suicides. And that's a very tragic thing because the newspaper effectively then was their life. That's really all they knew. And I can appreciate having that connection to what it is that you do, with the radio. I was a little bit lost when all of a sudden I'm not doing all these celebrity interviews anymore, and I'm not traveling and covering red carpets and doing all that. It's a shock to the system. It is. But it's also, that what do you have on the go at home? I was going to say I had kids. Oh my God. I don't have children. We have 2 dogs. We have 2 rabbits. I've got a husband, and I still, manage his career. So, I mean, I'm still working in a roundabout way, but I'm not doing a 9 to 5. I don't have a boss. I'm not answering. I mean, I've also owned my media company for, 20 years. So that's also a little bit of a different situation, but regrets, no. Now let's say about regrets in my relationship. Yeah. You know what? I didn't act properly towards this person who was giving me attention and loving me and making me feel special. I kind of had, I don't know, is it a diva complex? Is it, I was demanding. I literally kicked him out of the house. He was outside in the front street in the freezing cold in Canada when we had an argument one time about him using his phone as I was talking to him. But it's like, you hadn't seen me. We just reunited after, weeks apart, and you're scrolling Instagram and showing me pictures of shoes. And I just said, we haven't seen each other in weeks. I just got back from a trip. He just got back. And, you're on Instagram. Like, if that's your focus, get the fuck out of my house. And he was out in the street. I unplugged the Wi-Fi from my office in my house, and it was this big fight. And I said, then go. If you're more into that and that's your big thing, then go. So I regret doing a couple of those kinds of things early on in the relationship because I didn't know how to act. You have to remember that I was single for 30 some years of my life. So I'd never lived with somebody in that sense. I'd lived with my parents and my brothers, obviously, but I'd never cohabitated with somebody in such, in my own house, first of all, because I had my own house. That was new ground for me, being my territory and somebody else coming into it. No, it'll always be my house. It doesn't matter that, we're married or whatever. The mortgage is still in my name. It'll always be in my name until it's paid off or whatever. And that's the deal. And so as much as he was referring to it as our house and, I live here too, it's kind of like, well, while we weren't married, you were staying, you were visiting, you weren't, it's just, it might be a technicality. It might be, what's the word? I can't think of it now, but, it's not your house. It's semantics. That's the word. Thank you, Bonnie. Bonnie's always got me. I met Bonnie years ago when I was working at a publishing company, so she's the wordsmith here. Yes. It's the, it's the semantics of it all. It may be our house as we, but it's my house. It is. So I reacted badly to things early on in the relationship. So I do have regrets about that, but it's worked out, right? We're still together. But in terms of overall life, regrets or things that I would change, really no. And so that would make a very boring life story because I don't have any sort of, big changes that I would make or do anything because, again, who would not want to have had success and made a lot of money in their 30s and be able to just kind of coast along and, take it easy now? I don't know. Maybe that's just me, but... And, people always go and say, you use that whole thing when you're on your death, when you're laying on the hospital and when you look back at your life, would you do anything differently? Maybe that's a different scenario. Maybe I would look at those 2 years, like I retired, it was 2 years ago in June, right? So we're, 2.5 years in, I guess, at this point now. And, people asking me, what did you do with those 2 years from the time you left the radio shows? And I said, nothing. So maybe years down the road, there would be regret going from 2021 to 2023. I did sweet fuck all. And I guess I could have been doing something like that. But again, there's nothing missing from my life. I've passed up opportunities to, host other podcasts or other shows or whatever, but I just don't want to do that. In this moment, I don't want to do that right now. I do this podcast because it's just something, it's an outlet to kind of just talk about things and put it out there. And if people respond and react, great. This podcast isn't about making money and making me famous and giving me another 15 minutes of fame and whatever. It's really not. It's just, I've got a lot of stuff that I like talking about. I talk a lot. And here we go. This is an avenue to do it. And I could carry on for another 5 years if I still have things to talk about. And if people don't listen, whatever. There's no major money investment. There's no big time investment. We're not doing billboards and Facebook ads or whatever. I'm just doing this for something to do. And I'm okay with that. I think that's a big thing though, to ask about regrets in life. It's like, well, do I have regrets because somebody is making me feel I should have regrets? Is society telling me that I should have regrets? Why didn't I keep working until I was 45 or 50 and then have even more money and then retire at 50? Because again, in my situation, in my world, like I said, I was having that office job. I was then coming home and working even more. And I worked the jobs of 3, 4, 5 people. I worked the jobs as a newspaper columnist, as a separate radio host, as a separate corporate writer in an office in the daytime, as a publicity agent for my own books, as a, so I did all those things. So my mom would kind of, she retired a few years ago from working at a school for 30 some years. And I remember her saying that to me when I think she said, stupid. Are you stupid that you're going to retire? And she doesn't know my financial situation. And I think that's maybe what was most concerning to her. But she was making me feel like I should be bored. She was telling me that I'm wasting the day away because I sleep in until 10 or 10:30 every day. She was telling me that I should be doing more. And I'm just sitting here going, but that's because you were going stir crazy after you retired. Don't put that on me. That's your thing. So I think that we kind of get caught up with what people say we shouldn't be doing, what we should have achieved by a certain point in our life. Yeah, when I look at the statistics, that the average person, the first-time homeowner, is like 45 or 47 years old, and I look at that and go, wow, I bought my house at 25. My brothers bought their house even earlier when they got married. So, I mean, I don't look at that and go, haha, I bought a house when I was 25. You're still not going to do that until you're 47. I mean, maybe quietly I do that to myself. But that's do whatever you want. If you regret having kids, I'm going to talk about this, I think, in the next couple of weeks. When I was single and had no kids, I still don't have kids, but when I was single and had no kids, people would ask me about like when I'm going to get married or have kids, and I can't stand kids, so that was never going to be in the cards. And I'm gay, so it's not like I was going to accidentally knock up somebody. And so I remember thinking about that, going, there's so many people telling me that I should be married. So many people telling me that you can adopt, whatever. I don't like kids, period. It's not a matter of, it's not the right time in my life. I'm waiting until I'm financially stable. I want to have a house. No, it's just, it was never going to be a thing, Jeremy Bradley, and kids. Never. And it never made me feel bad. And so that's where, going back to that question about like the regrets you have in your life, it's, according to who? There's no roadmap for the way that your life is supposed to go unless you let others dictate it, or you have, when I was writing, books and doing the press rounds and people would ask me, on the radio show or whatever. So where do you see yourself in 5 years? I guess that's also a job, interview question as well. But where do you see yourself? What's down the road for you in the next year? I mean, I even asked that when I was interviewing celebrities who have a new album or when they're reality show contestants, right? They're the winner of the show. Where do you see yourself 5 years from now? And most of them are back to regular jobs because they haven't made anything of their talents. But I would always just say, I don't know. I have no idea where I'm going. I have no idea what's happening. I might stay in Winnipeg. I might move to Los Angeles. I might be a New York Times reporter. I don't know. And that was the excitement of my life, was not having these dreams and aspirations and these goals and saying, by this age, I'm going to have done this. By this age, I'm going to have this. By this age, I'll be doing this. I never, ever, ever did that. My one and only goal when I was in high school was to be a reporter at the Winnipeg Free Press, which was right across the field from my high school. And that was my thing. It was specifically for that newspaper because it was well respected. It was, right by my house. It was great. And, a full circle moment where I ended up becoming a columnist. I wasn't a daily news reporter, but I ended up still doing a video series based on my best-selling book that I had. And it was kind of like, well, that's good enough. That works for me. I got my fill, and there we go. So regrets, no, because that makes it seem like your life didn't go the way it's supposed to, or that and I think that we have now, if we make that smaller, I'm taking regrets as the big picture of like, would I do a different career? Would I live somewhere in a different city? But we all have things that we've, minor things that we regret. Maybe the time that we got into an argument with somebody at a store, or the time that we lost our patience and flipped off somebody when we were driving, right? Like, I mean, those things you might regret later down the road, but nothing that's impacting me today where I'm sitting here and going, yeah, I shouldn't have done this. Yeah, I shouldn't. No, I don't live my life with regrets. So maybe that's the key to my happiness all these years later. I don't know, but tell me your thoughts. Send me an email, live@jbonair.com, live@jbonair.com.
Ever had something to get off your chest but never had the balls to say it? That's a load of crap. SpeakFreeWithJB.com is exactly what you've been waiting for. Your chance to tell it like it is and not care what anybody else thinks. Have your say on issues of the day. Join newspaper and radio columnist Jeremy Bradley as he tells it like it is. Hundreds of thousands of people have stopped by, including some well-known celebrities who have had a chat with JB and speak candidly about what's really going on in the world. You can join them too. Have a rant or a rave. Be brave and head on over to www.speakfreewithjb.com now.
Who are the Kardashians feuding with now? What did that little thug Justin Bieber do this time? Who's getting hitched? And who's headed for Splitsville? Hear the latest celebrity news and gossip every day on Entertainment Wrap-Up. The good, the bad, the ugly, but mostly the ridiculously hilarious. It's all recapped in this daily segment at entertainmentwrapup.com. Have a laugh at the expense of the rich and famous when they take themselves way too seriously. It's 3 minutes of time-wasting fun at entertainmentwrapup.com. Check out Entertainment Wrap-Up at entertainmentwrapup.com. Brought to you by Speak Free Books.
Ask JB continues here on the Scribble. So the next question is, what's your advice on giving advice? And I've kind of already, I think maybe that's why I sort of covered it at the top of the show, is my advice is not to give advice. Because here's the deal. When people have told me in the past, or even still to this day, when people say to me, you should, I shut down right away and stop listening. Or I just put up, oh, maybe I'll still listen to them, but I don't, it's like, you're telling me what to do? No. And that's, I don't know, I always viewed it as controlling, and I realize that it's not. I mean, let's be honest, it's not people actually telling you do something. I mean, maybe it is sometimes. So, oh, maybe you should such and such. I would always hear that as, go do it because I'm telling you to do that. And that's maybe not somebody's intention, but that's how it came across to me. So yeah, as soon as somebody tells me you should, and I think a big part of that, going back to the thing about my parents, was I think that's part of it too. When I moved into my own house and suddenly, I'm in charge of all of this, property that I have now, that, oh, well, you should trim that tree. Oh, you should, it came across as criticizing. And that's what made me shut down, where it was kind of like, it's my house. If I don't like how that tree is shaped or whatever, then I'll do something about it. And so, yeah, so I don't like when people say you should. That's the word that just kind of makes me, I don't like it. And so when it comes to giving advice, let me just recap then. If I was going to say, if you're just tuning in, but you probably have been listening from the beginning, unless you jumped and skipped a segment. I always I tell people to I ask questions and make them look at something a different way. So let's come up with an example here on the spot. Okay, I don't like the relationship I'm in. What should I do? Okay, well, what's going to change if you end it? And that could be your living arrangements. That could be your income. Maybe you share, a bank account. It could be maybe children are involved. So when they start listing all of those things, that's going to make the person kind of go and start thinking, right? It's not only making them list off, but now they're putting everything out there. They're putting things in front of themselves to kind of maybe change the perspective and go and say, wow, there's a lot that's going to change. Maybe I'm not ready for that. So that's not me asking you to, make it, it's me asking just a general question. And by doing that, you are now starting to think of all of these situations or things that will change in your life, these aspects of your life that will be different. And that's not me taking your side and saying that he's an asshole, leave him, I can't believe it, the way he treats you. Well, that's not up for me. I might point out those things just in regular conversation, but I think that, again, if it's somebody who's close to me, I mean, they kind of know how I feel about their partner, whatever anyway. That's up to them. If that's how a person wants to live and that's how they get through things, great. I mean, I remember years ago, one of my colleagues at a publishing company that I worked at, she was a big feminist, and my grandparents had an anniversary, and so I brought in some pictures from the anniversary, and we were all talking, and everybody was kind of like, oh, your grandparents are so cute. And I started telling stories. I said, well, my grandma cooks everything, and that's just the way it is, because they got together in, the 1940s, and that was just the time. Maybe you look at that now and see that as sexist, the woman cooking for the men, but at the same time, the man had his responsibilities too. My grandpa was fixing everything around the house. He cut the grass, but she would be the one moving all the lawn ornaments. So she might do the cooking, but, and this is where you want to go and say, if you'd let me finish the story, he would never let her wash a dish. He would physically grab her and sit her down, either in the living room, at the kitchen table, and he would wash the dishes. So, or he would have a bath. He would be in the my grandpa had, he had lung cancer at one point. So he had a hole in his neck, and he had talked with that machine. So he was not able to, he was not able to have a shower, and he preferred baths. And so when he would be in the bath, my grandma would go iron his clothing, fold it up, put it on, on the chair in the bathroom. And they just had their routine. They were married 60 some years until he died. And you know what? It worked for them. It worked for them. Oh, am I doing Joe Biden now? And you know what? Guess what? It worked for them. Who the fuck are we to say? How many marriages are going 64, 65, 67 years these days? Not many. So they might have their arrangements that have worked for them for decades. It might not work for you, but that's on them. If it works for them, great. If she was unhappy and she didn't feel like speaking out, that's on her. But by all accounts, they still held hands. She still sat on his lap at the kitchen table when family was over. So in terms of giving advice, I don't know that we should be giving advice just because we're not in that person's shoes. We're not in that house every day, whatever they're dealing with. And I think that we use that term influencer so much based on social media people that it's like we're puppets that we just somebody says something, so we do it. Somebody says vote for this, so we do it. Somebody says, I never liked that term influencer when I was on the radio. I remember doing, we were on a press trip. I was covering some tourism thing, and I was there with some bloggers, and I'd never heard the term influencer actually at the time. We're going back several years now, and I understand in the actual dictionary definition what influence. I mean I know what that means, right? It's somebody who has influence or somebody who influences others. I get it, but I didn't know what it meant in the terms of a social media influencer, and it's really just again somebody who has an audience. And it kind of bothered me because I said, well, no, I'm not an influencer. Well, yeah, you're on the radio. You've got all these listeners. You're an influencer, and I said, I don't know that just because Jeremy Bradley says go and vote, or if I take that one step further and say vote Joe Biden, vote Barack, vote Trump, are people really going to do that because Jeremy Bradley said so? Really? And there's people that do have that high opinion of themselves but I've always kind of said I don't use that. I don't preach and say go and get vaccinated, go do and do this, because that's on you. If you can make those choices for yourself. Listen to the experts. If you want to use Twitter as your main source of news, go. Is that what I do? No, I wouldn't. My advice would be to use, reputable news sources that we all kind of know, right? There's the big media outlets, whether you trust them or not. I mean, at least go for the facts. Sometimes there are inaccuracies, sometimes things are wrong. And remember, I'm a member of the media, so it's a little bit weird when I go and criticize my own industry. But if they're quoting, the police chief who's reporting this or whatever, well, those are the police chief's words. Is when they start to editorialize, and I do agree, by the way, that there are times when opinion and commentary bleeds into the actual news reporting, but that's where you have to use that judgment. I never liked when tabloids would put a front page story and let's say it was about a child molester, and they say pervert raped boy. Pervert is editorializing. That let the reader draw their own conclusion about the facts and the news that you're presenting. If you're calling that person a pervert, already you're influencing my opinion by telling me how I should feel about that criminal, that, predator. And so let me do that. But when the news is doing, and I also don't like when news anchors or reporters, whatever, go and say, oh, that's such a sad story. It's a terrible thing. No, you're neutral. You're just giving me the information. Let me decide. I realize that it comes across, as them being empathetic, compassionate, what have you. No, give me the news. That is it. Don't make me feel like, oh, that's so, like that you're affected by it. No, as the reporter or the anchor, you're not affected. You're neutral. You're telling me the story. That's it. I'm the viewer. I'm the one formulating the opinion.
We hear you chirping. Get scribbling. Tweet up the Scribble at The Scribble Show. Join the discussion with Jeremy Bradley. It's all going down right now on Twitter at The Scribble Show and at thescribbleshow.com.
Well, I can take the hint. They threw that Twitter. Is it? I don't want to have a promo that's saying get Xing, get Twitter. We're calling it Twitter still. I don't care what the hell Elon does, and I don't really care what anybody else does as long as they make the right decisions for themselves. My name is Jeremy Bradley. This is The Scribble. That email address once again live at jbonair.com. Live at jbonair.com. I will talk to you same time, same place next week. Bye for now.
Want more Scribble? Check out thescribbleshow.com for past shows, celebrity interviews, cheapskate tips, and more. That's at thescribbleshow.com and on Twitter at The Scribble Show. The Scribble is a speak-free media presentation.
If you want some